Hi, this is the KThree, and we are here with one of my friends, Livia, who is now our friend of the KThree, and she is going to share with us some Korean history for my country, because I personally am a little confused, and we would like a little bit more information. I find that a lot of times what ends up happening is just being a Westerner, I don't understand the historical context of what I think a lot of people just automatically know. But before we get diving into that, let's meet Livia. Hi, Livia. Welcome to our show. We're so excited to have you.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Sure.
And especially just this topic in general.
Yeah.
But for me, I am actually a Korean teacher by trade. And I actually teach Jen Korean. And I'm Korean in general. And so I grew up in the K-drama world my whole life. Personally, I write blogs and kind of debate between the Korean brain and the American brain. Yeah, and just kind of like regurgitate on paper or online on blogs.
Or now on YouTube.
On
For
YouTube.
us. And we are so excited. So that's pretty much what, because I know you love the history and the Korean history, and you like to talk about it, and we've had numerous conversations about it, because I'm always quizzing you about like, oh yeah, what just happened? I don't understand what we just did. So, I mean, God bless. I'm like, maybe I can just bring her on and she can help all of us. So I appreciate that you're doing this. But yeah, what time frame are we looking at with my country? Because it's very violent, obviously, but all wars are very violent, but I feel like we've watched so many Chosun era dramas that this one is clearly different. And what is the difference there?
The difference between majority of the other Chosun era or specific dynasty era dramas, this one is specifically a transition between the end of the Goryeo dynasty and then the beginning of the Chosun dynasty. And so what it is the coup d'etat kind of like that's happening in between right there. And so Chosun dynasty doesn't actually start until around 1392, 13.
So
I was raised by two teachers.
Yes.
Raise your hand. Ask questions. Hello. Question.
Yeah.
What is the major markings of the different dynasties? Like, what makes them different? Why was it not just another piece of Goryeo dynasty?
Because of the fact that at that time, the Mongols were in a peace treaty with the Goryeo dynasty. So that is why there wasn't like too many wars going on at that time. But it also at the same time was kind of falling apart because there was that what they call requirement to have the Mongol dynasty was kind of made up with the Yuan dynasty, which is kind of Chinese and all that mixture. And they required Korean kings to marry their princesses. And so in that case, the bloodline wasn't pure and all those things. And a lot of the ministers didn't agree with that. And so it was just slowly kind of just breaking apart.
So they kind of had their hooks into...
Exactly. And because of that, there was actually Gisaeng, which is the general,
right?
In this one. And he's actually a real character.
Oh, okay.
A real person as well as a character.
Okay. Yeah.
And he actually looks really similar to the actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Very, very similar. And so he is he's going against this other general. And so if you see at the beginning of My Country, they talk about, oh, you should come up and join forces with General Che or General Yi. And so that was kind of what Namjoon and Namsono, like Namjoon was telling his son, okay, you need to hold hands with this person, General, because that's the way we move forward and we're going to see what we can do with the future. And so in that case, what happened is that Namjoon, in this case, sided with General Yi. And they had that history. And it's funny because in the historical information that I was researching, there was, they kind of named a few individuals that he worked together with specifically to make...
He being General E?
General E.
Okay.
Yeah, so he had a right-hand man or two right-hand people. And so in this case, Namjoon wasn't the name of that person, but it was I believe it was like Ju-jung-ha.
Oh, so there were a couple of ministers, but for the purposes of my country, they've kind of put
melded them all into one character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
like he's just like the epitome of pure evil. But
So bad.
but in
Hate
this
them so
case, and it's funny because the history information that I was researching is just it painted a very nice picture of General Yi, as in like this is what his vision was, and this is what he wanted for the future of Korea, and you know, and so it's just very different than the actual drama, but for that sense, there was the kind of rivalry between those two generals, and then trying to figure out the next step, because the king at that time was King Kongyang, and so they were trying to figure out how to overthrow him, and then go from there, and then create their own. And so General Yi was like, I want to go the other way, and he wants to make a new world.
Right.
And whereas General Cho was more like, let's try to build up the kingdom that is breaking down, and
I see.
you know.
That's why it's called My Country.
Yes, the new age.
Yeah, the new age.
So wait, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, so generally we know is, I'm curious if this is history that you study deeply in school, and how well the Korean population knows this story, because as Westerners, we're just going to Wikipedia and going to friends like you to look for this kind of understanding of what's happening, or like you were saying, it's maybe given a shinier gleam to it, and maybe.
Well, I think every country has their own focus on their history, and so I think in Korea they do kind of focus on the very important parts of how the Joseon era was created, and so when kids are taught Korean, they're always taught about King se-jong.
Right.
And so King se-jong was actually part of that Joseon dynasty era of monarchs, and he was after King Taejong, which surprisingly is the
Lee Bang-won.
exactly
Right.
And
Jang-
so he
Gisaeng
changed
House.
his name from
So he's the father of King
King
Se-jong.
Se-jong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So question. So I think I might have actually. It might have all come together for me. It's a great
exciting.
moment. So is the difference between the two dynasties, the two eras, is it from being kind of mixed in with China to being just
independent
independent
country.
Korea? Is that the kind of the difference between the two? Is that what
Right.
is that what story is about?
they are trying to purify
Yes.
Korea back to its
Original.
origins.
Its own
Yes.
Okay.
And so
That's a key piece of information that I did not pick up.
and so when Lee Seong-ge, like the general Lee Seong-ge, he actually put a puppet king at the beginning. So he wasn't actually the king himself. But then after that, he realized in order for have a pure bloodline dynasty of Korea, he needed to start it. And so
They did that very quickly.
Yeah,
in the
and
show.
so
You
that's
didn't really
why-
see it.
I need far. You guys know me. I need far more information. One quick bullet point at the bottom. I've lost it. How close is the drama to what the history is telling us? Like, I mean, obviously you're going to take a historical moment and dramatize it just for drama purposes. But I mean, is there, how similar is it, or how different is it, or how many liberties are they taking in their storytelling?
I think
here?
that historically they're trying to be very true to the historical information
Okay.
because they do mention the Wang clan from the actual Goryeo dynasty, and so from Wang Gon, and so to that fear that their descendants will to come and try to revolt and take back their rightful place, and there's that fear, and so you see even Pangwon mentioning that in that whole like his spiel in front of the king, saying like, you know, he should, you know, please protect your relatives, and like that portion was kind of right before that he comes in and says, what happens if Wang clan and tries to take over the throne again, you know, and certain things like that. And so I think they try to be true to that regard when they actually say things, but the whole the drama between Seolhui and those things are just extra.
Those are
Right.
just extra.
But
okay.
yeah,
Well, let's
Yeah, so
We
let's
wanna ask-
let's go ahead.
who's real and who is not, who's a fictional character. So we know that General Yi, who became the monarch, is was a real
Was a real
person.
character.
His son Ibang-wan was a real person. The queen was a real person.
yes,
But and Namjoon, we know, was probably
a compilation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what about do-hwan's character and se-jong's character? The two angry young men.
Very angry. So angry.
I think they're just for the suspense and the drama.
Yeah.
Because there's no mention in detail. I'm pretty sure there would have been if they mentioned it.
The Sohee character is like the sword of Pangwon, as like private army. So
Right.
did each of these private armies have their like sword? Like, is that that's
Yes,
a fair?
that was
so
a
he could have
huge
been.
thing. Like, and it's funny because it's even very apparent in all the other K-dramas, even modern, because there's always a army and then there's the corporate group.
Yes.
And so in this case, Seolhui was part of the army group. And so this is like the old-fashioned version of that.
Okay.
And usually if you have some type of wealth or high status and you were allowed in that time private armies, then that's exactly what it would be divided by, as in this is the people that guard the main person and these are the people that go do the dirty work.
I see.
And so
Okay.
Much dirty work.
So
and it's
so
always
much dirty work.
underhand. It's always like a shush, kind of like you
Yeah.
nobody knows. And it's like usually that whole phrase where they say, like, I use you and then I throw you
Yeah.
away. That was literally very true.
Right.
Like, and it was very, very sad, but it was very true.
Yeah.
And so
It's apparent in the show how disposable lives were.
It's crazy. The other theme in this drama that I've noticed is the private army theme. Like that seems to be a running theme, and I was just I feel like even in Chosun era there seems to still be private armies, but this seems to be a very big plot point in my country. Is that something that historically was a sticking point, or was it something that
So it not necessarily like armies and like the number that Ibang-won had when they were talking about 500 or whatever.
Yeah.
Not sure about that many, but I knew everyone had a posse.
right? So they
It
had
was
like their
always-
private security team.
Exactly.
Is that
It was
what
always a
was?
bodyguard team.
Right,
And it was
yeah.
like, and it was only for the wealthy. Same thing for like civil servant exams were only for the wealthy. And it was interesting how Seolhui went to actually sign up for the civil service exam. Civil service exams were only for the upper echelon, but that only happened after Isongge. And so that's when the Yangban system started. And Yangban system is noble class system, meaning
okay.
only the nobles get the best stuff. Only the nobles get the education system.
how to read and write.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and that's why it was completely revolutionary when King Se-jong allowed everyone to learn to write and read in their own language. Personally, I don't quite know where they were going with that when they were allowed, like when Seolhui's like, when they opened it to everyone
Yeah.
to do the civil service exam. So I don't know if that specifically was Koryo Dynasty civil service rules or if that was, because Isongge, the ministers, they made that rule to make it so it's just for Yangbans. So
I feel like I missed a plot point during that civil service exam because it was like down to like, it was like battle to the death. And like, it was like only one person, like it was like, was it just
only one
elimination
job?
down to like one, there's only one job? And then other ones you see where everybody, if you pass a test, you get in. Why was it the military one is down to like one person? I was confused as to what that was all about.
that is also like,
Is that just
is that
dramatic
just
license?
creative,
because the thing
dramatic
is like
license?
when,
Okay.
yeah, because the thing is usually when it's civil service exam, when you come of age as a Yangban male, not a woman, but a male, and you would have taken an exam, and it was usually, like all written. So I don't know if this was a military civil service exam.
Well, it
think
seemed
it
to be a
was to be-
military
Yeah,
one, but
and
you would
so-
think you would want as many able-bodied young
I thought
men.
it was to
That's
be
a-
its specific position,
Was
like
that
the
what it
head
was?
like
of.
because he
Okay.
Yeah.
was given the
have a
position as
specific rank.
inspector. But the thing is that when Namjoon was mentioning like, oh, you passed,
Yeah.
but it wasn't you passed as in you got the position. It was more like you just passed the test.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's the
It's a
sense
little
I got
hazy.
in the sense of like,
Might have
even
to
if it was a
rewatch.
specific position, and it was almost like he was saying, I will give you the position as inspector.
Right. I have a question about the Gisaeng House because that is the place that holds all
the
these secrets.
That secret room in this
Yes.
week's episodes, when they opened up and all of the scrolls, I was like, that's amazing.
Yes.
It's so,
Right.
it's so colorful.
So is that historically true that the Gisaengs would get these secrets from their
Right.
clients and then save them?
So
and
it's like
present
a
them to
very
be-
running theme in the Chosun era. Any drama, you will notice that the Gisaeng House will be the house of secrets.
Yeah.
And the house of dealings, the house of planning, house of, rebellion, whatever. And so, but it's always been prominent like that. And so Gisaengs in that case were almost like underground spies, but very pretty underground spies.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is that if you see not only in like Mr. Sunshine,
I was just thinking about
the
Mr. Sunshine.
woman from the cafe,
Uh-huh.
that was the modern day Gisaeng
Yeah,
house,
yeah.
if
Right?
you think about
Yeah.
it. But in this case, it was a motel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like also a very, very prominent kind of theme where it's like it's house of secrets and it's house of place of where
That's
you
where
drink
some-
and you talk and you say
Some
things that you
assassinations
normally
took
wouldn't
place.
say.
Yeah.
Just like that scene where the general was killed and
Right.
he was never seen again.
Ever.
Right.
You know, and
Because
so
they all, the ladies
exactly.
all worked together and got rid of it.
But Heng
fascinating.
Suodishin, which is the main elder of
Uh-huh.
the Gisaeng house, I love her.
Oh,
So good.
yes.
Oh,
Jang Young now.
she's
Oh, I love her so
Yes.
much. She's so good.
Yeah, so
She just brings me joy every time I see her.
when a Gisaeng has a child, the child becomes the property of the Gisaeng house.
Right, which
That
is
is-
yeah,
so
and
that
that's
is
what,
very-
that's how,
yeah.
yeah.
And usually what happens is that child becomes a Gisaeng
Uh-huh.
as well. But in this case, that was also a twist because Hije never, what you call like gave herself to anybody.
Right.
So that was a twist in the sense of she never went fully through
Oh,
to
okay.
becoming a Gisaeng.
Mhm.
And that was very surprising because when you become a Hengsu,
Uh-huh.
you need to literally have the experience, and that's part of the
Mhm.
order of it. And so that's why when she said when she was dying and she said
Uh-huh.
sorry to her right hand girl, she was actually supposed to be the next in line because she's the one with the most experience. She's the one that's
Right.
been there for her for like the entire time, and it went to Hije.
So from a
instead.
story standpoint, I mean, I get structurally and dramatically why it went to her, but from a historical standpoint, why would it pass on to our girl instead of the next one in line?
historical standpoint, I don't think there's a historical
No,
standpoint
no,
to that.
okay.
Because the thing is that there's no family in the Gisaeng house. It's like you come in either because you were sold or because you walked in your own 2 feet because you have no other job and this is the only way to pay for your
To
family's
survive.
So would it have been
survival,
because Madame So thought of her as because it was her best friend's daughter? Did she, because there was some sort of connection there? Is that kind of what we're getting out of that?
I don't particularly think so. I think that not only because of the drama sense and the relationship, but I think that also they were portraying her as the street smart girl.
Right.
And so because of that,
She's not very good at it.
yeah.
That's why I was like, I question this move. I need to know more.
She's
Needs to learn how to hide better.
not she's not exactly the ideal candidate for that. But, like when it comes to they were trying very hard.
Yes.
Like don't get me wrong, she was trying very hard because she was completely different. She was very cold. She was very in your face, blunt. I don't care. I think that's
Take charge.
part of what Hengsu liked about her.
I will allow it.
Yeah. That's the only thing I can derive
It fits
from
the
that.
story. Fits the story.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
All
Oh my
right.
God, Olivia, this is so amazing.
This
Does
is so
anybody have
great.
any other questions for Olivia? No? Okay.
I have so many.
So many, yeah. So we could do this for hours. Do you have
Yes.
any final thoughts that we need to keep aware of as we move forward? What we got another 6 episodes, I think, to the
We still have
end.
6
We, as people who do not have a Korean history background, that if it's mentioned in a one-liner for Jen, and I just am like, I don't understand what that means, and I move on, I should
if
be
you're like
oh,
me too, I
that's
say get up and pause and
yes,
rewind.
That's what
Right.
that's what Livia was talking about. Is there anything that I should be
we
aware
don't know
of?
where this is going to end.
Not
right?
really. When Ibangwang becomes king, they mention that he killed a very prominent founder of
Oh.
the nation, which in this case
Right.
was
Namjoon.
no.
It would have been
no?
his father,
No,
right?
this is
Oh,
not future. This already
happened.
happened. Sohee assassinated him.
At the Gisaeng House?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
him.
Oh, him.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's the one where historically it mentions that he killed a founding member.
Oh.
And in that history, but there's no mention of anything else really after
Oh,
that.
okay.
And so I'm not sure
Okay.
if there's anything more because they always just skip straight to King Se-jong, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
why don't you
Just
just
what happened in between?
like there's nothing in between that, know, and then it's always just from Lee Sung-ge, awesome. And then King Se-jong, awesome. Okay, well then what happened?
There's a
because
lot,
Right.
there's a lot of time
because
in
there's
between those two.
Lee Bang-won, even though he was the fifth son, he was actually the third monarch. And
Right.
then King Se-jong was the fourth.
Right.
So
there's who is the second monarch?
That is maybe that's the mystery.
We will be paying attention.
We'll be paying attention for the last 6 episodes.
Yes.
Livia, thank you again
Yes,
so much.
yes,
It's been
thank
so
you.
fun.
Inviting
It was
me.
so
It's so
great.
much
Oh my God,
fun.
so much information. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. We hopefully will do more of these because Livia hopefully will come back and share with us all sorts of interesting
we can
things
make
that we
them,
do
yes.
not know about Korean history and culture and all of that stuff. And until next time, we're the K3. I'm Jen.
I'm Livia.
I'm Karen.
I'm Marisa.
And if you want to check out any of our other shows, we've got all sorts of goodness. We've got our weekly watch list. We've got what we were excited about seeing in November. We've got some astrology. You can check them all out right here. We'll see you next time. Bye.